Welcome back to Wednesday Night Fightback. Now, a few days ago, the government did a sharp turn and issued what will end up being hundreds of new drilling licenses for oil and gas projects in the North Sea. Michael, what do you make of this sharp turn?
I think back to Samuel Johnson saying how being executed in a fortnight concentrates the mind wonderfully. And
Yes.
This is something which, you have to be peculiarly lame-brained not to see that this is a good idea. I sometimes think, I often think that actually knowing the numbers matters. And here's the numbers. On a 12-month basis at the moment, we're exporting about 54 billion pounds worth of fuels. We're importing 109 billion pounds worth of fuels. So we've got a fuel deficit of 55 billion pounds a year. And if you look at our total trade deficit, that's exports of goods and services, our total trade deficit on a 12-month basis is 109 billion. So essentially more than half of our entire trade deficit is accounted for by this fuel imbalance. So if you believe, and you should believe, that what happens in the trade balance will determine or be one of the factors that goes into what's going to happen to sterling, and therefore what happens to inflation, and therefore what happens to interest rates and your mortgage, then doing something this simple, or sounding to do something this simple, is an absolute no-brainer. You would have to be peculiarly stupid not to see that. But I have to say that when it comes to the environmental argument, we have been plagued with people of peculiar stupidity now for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit technical in that a lot of the oil and gas that we would produce wouldn't necessarily be used domestically, would it? So Sunak tried to play, I'm sure some of it would be, but Sunak tried to play an import substitution argument to defeat some of the eco arguments. He said, obviously, why would you lug oil and gas halfway around the world if you've got it in the North Sea and you can pipe it to your own domestic market? There's something in that, isn't there? But it's not the whole story, is it, Michael? Because, as you say, our exports are there, but it nets off. Obviously, it would be better, even if we exported some of this stuff as a country, we'd be better off drilling it and using it.
Well, one of the things I'd love to see is shutting down Drax. I mean, I just, this is a government which tells us that we've got to stop our wood burners because they're causing pollution. And at the same time, we've got bloody Drax power station cutting down old wood forests in the US, making them into wood chips, shipping them over to Britain to burn in Drax and pretend that is a green
we've covered that.
resource.
Yeah, I accept that. I think it's absolutely nonsensical and is crazy, and it should be stopped. But just on this issue, it's interesting. What fascinates me partly is that the economics are there. Obviously, if you produce more, even if you export it, your trade deficit would go down. I'm all in favour of that. But very, very few politicians are prepared to talk about the massive trade problem we have. But leaving that aside, I'm also concerned about a political problem. And you quoted Sam Johnson at the start. I'm going to quote George Harrison. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
Oh,
so the problem is
pulling out the old George Harrison from your back pocket.
Yeah. So but the problem is that the government really don't know where they're going. And what concerns me from a purely political point of view, this is just politics. This is retail politics. We fought a by-election. The SDP did rather well for us. We came sixth in Uxbridge out of 17. And that was a cathartic by-election in that the Tories would have lost that seat but for ULEZ. Now all of a sudden the Tories are doing what they always do, which is backtracking and panicking and saying we don't like ULEZ. Well, I'll remind people that ULEZ was their policy originally. But I think this is in the wake of that. I think you're getting a skepticism about eco policy and net zero. And this is Sunak's way of saying, well, there's an election, as you say, it concentrates their mind. They've got another announcement and they make it. What do you make of that?
No, I think it's right. And I mean, it highlights the real question of, okay, he's announced this a policy and he can write the, he can write the contracts. Will it actually happen? I mean, there are...
Is it fundable? ESG.
Well, there are two really interesting points here. First of all, you have, and I don't really want to use the blob word, but let's call it the blob. You know, you have plenty of structures within the governance of the within Britain's governance which could stop this or stymie it basically endlessly.
But what about the banks, Michael? I mean, the banks on ESG.
Well, I was going to ask you about this because you've got all the banks are saying, "Oh, we're not going to fund this," and you know that's encouraged by Bank of England. You've also got insurance companies that have also signed up to various things, suggesting that they aren't going to fund oil and gas things. So I think the thing this actually leads you onto is if no one else is going to fund it, if no one else is going to fund it, the private sector can't fund it, maybe the public sector should fund it. Maybe this is actually where Britain gets back into the oil business. And instead of allowing private companies to make huge profits and then taxing them at 75% retrospectively or whatever the geniuses at the Treasury are going to propose, maybe actually this is one of these things. Say, okay, I understand that the banks, you feel leery about it. I understand that the insurance companies feel leery about it. Well, we need this. We're going to do it. It makes sense. It makes sense economically. It makes sense environmentally. We're going to fund it. And it's going to be a British company.
No, I think there's a good argument for that. As I say, it's a perfectly legitimate thing that's come up in the financial press. It's all right. The Tories are very, very good, as you know, at issuing press releases and making statements. Will it actually happen? I'm not sure it will. But anyway, we said that it was sensible. I think from the trade...
Do you think the SDP would consider having a policy of saying, yes, actually, not only is this going to happen, it's going to be a nationalised industry and it's going to be owned by the British people for the British people?
Well, I think
would we go that far?
Look. It's possible. I could ask the policy team to have a look at it. And actually, we've got some very, very good expertise on the policy team, large oil company expertise that would be able to advise us. But it's worth looking at, Michael. I think you can't afford it. One of the things we can't afford to do is to continually run these massive deficits. You quoted the current figure, but I just looked at the bilateral trade deficit with Norway, which is all. I mean, okay, they probably provide us with the odd herring, but basically it's oil and gas. And I think in 2021 it was running at tens of billions. So it's a major problem. We need to deal with it.
We actually have a slight trade surplus in energy with the European Union. Did you know that?
Yes, I did. Yes, I read that. Yeah,
and yet there's a massive deficit, as I say, mainly with Norway. And of course, Norway have used their energy resources to make themselves one of the per capita richest countries in the world.
Yes. Well, we should probably take a leaf out of their book. We'll see. Anyway, listen, it's nice to chat about that, Michael, and we'll wait and see what happens. We'll be following this.
All right. Okay. See you later.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.